Hello, everybody. If you're watching this, you probably know I posted a reading of Ode to a Nightingale, and I did not the best reading, of course, not a particularly, you know, exceptional reading, I guess. But I did say in the description that I planned on posting an analysis of the poem, or just some thoughts about it, and I'm going to do that right now. Some background about this poem. It's Ode to a Nightingale, John Keats. It was one of the 6 odes he did in 1819. He also wrote Ode on a Grecian Urn and Ode to Psyche, among others. This is one of Keats' most popular poems. For people, like, it usually comes down between Ode to a Nightingale or Ode on a Grecian Urn, I've noticed. With Keats, it's always one of the two. Your favorite Keats poem has got to be one of the two. I happen to come down to the Nightingale side of things. Now, what I'd really like to talk about here, about the poem, is its imagery. I really like imagery. I love when a work has a strong visual presence, or a very strong sensory presence. It just adds a dimension of palpability to the whole thing. Now, it's a very sensuous poem, Ode to a Nightingale, very sensuous, but in the sense that it is evocative of the senses. But the discrepancy to note here is that there is a decided lack of any direct observation. Now, this is in contrast, in particular, to the first Romantic era poets. You take a look at Wordsworth and Coleridge, and when they wrote about imagery, it was always A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's like they take all the things they saw, and they put it down on paper, and that's just the way it was. Here, though, you don't get that. Right from the very first lines, the narrator lets you know. He says, "My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense, as though of hemlock I had drunk." Now, hemlock, for those of you who know your Greek philosophers, this was the poison administered to Socrates. He died by way of ingesting hemlock. And it's interesting, hemlock is a substance that gradually numbs your body, just gradually cuts you off from the senses. So this whole descent throughout the poem that we see in the narrator, it's gradual. He's just gradually losing his grip on reality. And on the one hand, he's cut off. He's cut off from the physiological world, from the realm of sensation. And then by extension, he's cut off from the spiritual realm as well. And I'm going to get to that later. But now, he establishes right from the get-go, his senses aren't working, but he continues to describe. He describes a lot of things in this poem. There's a lot of imagery. But none of it is done directly. It's all, for the most part, it's done through similes or through metaphors, a lot through negation, and at one point through synesthesia. And you take a look at similes or metaphors. When you describe something with a simile or with a metaphor, you're not talking about the thing in and of itself. You're talking about the thing in relation to something else. You're not focusing on just A, you're focusing on A and B. So again, not a direct line of observation we're getting here. The first simile, like I said, as though of hemlock I had drunk. He didn't actually drink of hemlock, but what he's feeling is evocative of the experiences of hemlock, of ingesting hemlock. First metaphor, light-winged dryad of the trees. He calls the nightingale, "Thou light-winged dryad of the trees," in some melodious plot of yada yada yada. So again, even the nightingale, the subject of the poem, the thing that the ode is dedicated to, he's not even describing that directly. He's describing that by way of metaphor. And then the negation. The negation really comes in stanza 5. The first lines of stanza 5. "I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs." Now, I cannot see. Another open confession from our narrator that, he can't see the things around him. He can't see the flowers at his feet. He knows the flowers are there. He knows they're there, but he can't see them. He can't perceive them. He can't accurately describe them. And then a couple lines down, he says, "But in embalmed darkness, guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows." Now, guess each sweet. The things he's describing, these essentially, they're constructs of his imagination. He doesn't know what's around him. He doesn't know what it smells like, what it looks like. But he knows it's there. And so he's doing his best. He's playing a bit of a guessing game here. He's playing a bit of a guessing game. He has to conjecture about what's around him, and he has to conjure them up in his head. So you see here, the Romantic era was, placed a lot of veneration on imagination. Both in the sense of, coming up with imaginative concepts, but even here, just imagination on the technical level. The fact that these technical elements, they are constructs of the imagination and not things he's actually seeing. And then the coming lines, he describes in pretty, he gives off a pretty good list of the grass, the thicket, the fruit tree, wild white hawthorn, the pastoral eglantine. And it just comes off with this sense of yearning. He doesn't know what's around him. His senses are dulled. But it's there. He knows it's there. He knows the beauty of the world is there. And he longs for it. And he longs for this beauty. He's cut off from the beauty of the physical world. But then it's also kind of reflective of the idea that he's cut off from the emotional as well. It's like, imagine if any of you have ever felt particularly awful at one point or another in your life, and I'm sure we all have. If you feel really, really awful, really, it's just because there was a point in your life where you felt invincible, where you felt wonderful, where your life was filled with mirth and with joy and with color. And then it's all gone. His senses are gone here, no physiological, but then cut off spiritually as well, it would seem. Now, the synesthesia. He says in the second line, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs. Now, in the line before, he uses the word, I cannot see. Now, he's combining two senses here. Visual sense on the one hand, with the seeing, and then olfactory sense on the other hand, with incense. We don't really look at incense. We burn it so we can smell it. It's a combining of the two. Now, as he's already established, his senses are numb emotionally, mentally, psychologically. He is numb. He is numbed to the world. And in terms of his senses, not only is he unable to use them to their full extent, but he's lost the ability to distinguish between them as well now. It's like, it's just a blending. It's blending these two things. He is so far gone that he cannot distinguish the things that at one time would have been second nature for him to distinguish. Now, why does he do this? Why does he establish this dichotomy of lavish description on the one hand without any accurate sensory input whatsoever on the other hand? Now, he knows these things are there because past experience has taught them they're there. But now, the place he's in, it's a place where here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown. Now, on the physiological level, this represents a crippling of the senses. He knows the beauty of the natural world to be there, even if he cannot see it. So he imagines what it must be like. And then on the metaphorical level, it's like a spiritual truncation from the world. And he now dwells in a mental state where but to think is to be full of sorrow, or leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. He is trying to recall the beauty of a world that he thinks is entirely lost, is how it would seem. If we follow a sort of dualistic mindset, we think that, you can't be full if you don't know what it means to be hungry. You can't be quenched if you don't know what it is to be thirsty. And you can't have hope if you don't have despair. And he despairs so deeply right now. Now, why the nightingale? Here's where it all kind of ties together. Why the nightingale? Now, the beauty of the narrator's world, it's left him. He's left in darkness right now. He can't see, he can't smell, he can't feel. But then he hears this song from a nightingale, and it kind of restores a glimmer of light to his otherwise blackened world. And he says, "Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird, and now hungry generations tread thee down." Now, we all know the bird's going to die. And it's hinted at one point, like at the end of the poem, it's hinted at the bird does end up dying. But he calls it immortal. And he says, "The song I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown." Now, he's not calling the bird immortal. It's the song that's immortal. He hears the song now, and thousands of years ago, people were sitting in gardens, much like he is, and they heard the song of a nightingale, and they too were enchanted by it. And so, it kind of establishes a sort of juxtaposition that I think is pronounced more clearly in Ode on a Grecian Urn, but that I think is pronounced more lyrically in Ode to a Nightingale. On the one hand, there's the physical world, the world that the narrator inhabits, where his senses are dulled. He can't observe anything directly. He has to make up everything in his head. And all hope seems to have faded from the world. Our looks, our beauty, the physical beauty, it fades. A sunset, it sets. A flower, it withers and dies. A beautiful girl, 50 years from now, nobody's going to be complimenting her on her good looks. But then there's the beauty of art. And this is embodied in the Song of the Nightingale. As long as there is a nightingale somewhere in the world, doesn't have to be the same one, but as long as there's a nightingale out there singing the nightingale song, every nightingale, including the one that Keats sees, or not sees, the one that our narrator hears as he sits alone in this garden, every single one of those nightingales endures because the song endures. And this to him is just painful. It's painful to him. He has this bleak, disparate, and depraved world that surrounds him, where everything is suffering, and where palsy shakes a few sad last gray hairs, and where youth grows pale and spectre thin and dies. So you got this decay on the one hand, and he looks and hears this song, and it's beautiful, and he knows that this song is going to outlive him. He knows that in a few years, he's going to be dead, and nobody's going to remember a damn thing he did, and nobody's going to care. But this bird will endure in its song, and it will transcend the ages and permeate all the annals of history and endure through time. And that's kind of painful to him, to think that he must suffer so much with something so carefree, can sing something so beautiful, and effectively never, ever die. Now that, I think, is quite beautiful. Just the whole poem in general. Because F. Scott Fitzgerald said at one point in letters to his niece, he said, "I can no longer read Ode to a Nightingale without getting tears in my eyes." And I think it's pretty easy to see why. Now, I'm almost out of time here, so I kind of had to try to cram everything in. I hope I did a good job. If you want to give me some feedback, it would be much appreciated, because I've never really done a YouTube channel before, and I'm kind of clueless as to all this is going to work, and I'm hoping to do a good job with it. Hoping to engage with you guys. But yeah, go ahead and start up a little discussion in the comments below. Let me know what you think. And I'll be posting something in the near future here, not too long. I'm thinking about either doing just like a general overview of what I kind of want to do with the channel, or talking about a movie I saw over the weekend called Stalker. Not sure what I'm going to do. But again, thank you very much for watching. And I hope you come back and decide to watch again. Thank you guys. Have a good one. Bye-bye.